Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order for May 27th, 2024. Bonjour tout le monde. J'aimerais déclarer cette réunion du 27 mai 2024 ouverte. Before proceeding to the agenda, I want to recognize that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Host Nation. The people of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Service Board honors the peoples and land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Today, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and customs. The Ottawa Police Service Board honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We are currently broadcasting on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. Should we receive any disruptions, I would ask that everyone remain patient as we work to fix the issue and resume the meeting as soon as possible. Prior to this public meeting, we held our in-camera meeting. I can report the following in terms of items considered in camera. Item 1, operational update, major events and demonstrations. The board considered this item in camera pursuant to 44.2K information that Section 8 of the Municipal Freedom and Information and Protection of Privacy Act would authorize a refusal to disclose if it were contained in a record. The board received an update from the service regarding its operational plans for policing upcoming major events and demonstrations, as well as a debrief on previous events that took place. No decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. Item number 2 was review of operations February 16th to 18th, 2024. The board considered this item in camera pursuant to the same subsection, 44.2K. The board received an update from the service regarding its operational review of the Family Day weekend. There will be a public update related to this review as well on our agenda this evening. No decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. Item 3, Labor Relations Unit Report, first quarter 2024. The board considered this item in camera pursuant to 44.2D, Labor Relations or Employee Negotiations, 44.2E, Litigation or Potential Litigation Affecting the Board, including matters before administrative tribunals, and 44.2F, Advice that would be inadmissible in a court by reason of any privilege under the law of evidence, including communications necessary for that purpose. The board received an update on labor relations activity from the past quarter. Again, no decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. Item number 4, OPS Cybersecurity Strategy Report, first quarter 2024. The board considered this item in camera pursuant to 44.2K, which was referred to earlier. The board received an update on the service's cybersecurity program. No decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. Item number 5, 2 temporary requests for assistance under the Community Safety Policing Act, Section 19. The board considered this item in pursuant to 44.2K as well. The board approved 2 requests for temporary assistance in keeping with Section 19 of the new Act. Item 6, Legal Services Report, first quarter 2024. The board considered this item in camera pursuant to 44.2E, litigation or potential litigation affecting the board, including matters before administrative tribunals. 44.2F, advice that would be inadmissible in a court by reason of any privilege under the law of evidence, including communications necessary for that purpose. The board received an update on legal claims and actions filed against the board in the previous quarter. No decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. Item 7, a labor relations matter. The board considered this item in camera pursuant to 44.2D, labor relations or employee negotiations, 44.2E, litigation or potential litigation affecting the board, including matters before administrative tribunals, 44.2F, advice that would be inadmissible in a court by reason of any privilege under the law. The board received and discussed a memo from the chief regarding provisions of the collective agreement related to sick leave. No decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. Item number 8, the board considered this item in camera pursuant to 44.2E, again, litigation or potential litigation affecting the board. F, advice that would be inadmissible in court by reason of any privilege under the law of evidence. The board received an update from legal counsel on an upcoming coroner's inquest. No decision or resolution was taken with respect to this item. I will now proceed to the confirmation of the agenda. Confirmation of the agenda. It is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirm the agenda of the 27th May 2024 meeting. Is the agenda confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. It is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirm minutes number 100 of the 22nd April 2024 meeting. Are the minutes confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Thank you. Number 4 of our agenda, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I see none. Number 5, public delegations. We have 8 public delegations registered to speak today. When I call your name, you will be able to turn on your mic and video. Each delegate has up to 5 minutes to address the board. As a reminder, the board has set aside 1 hour as part of its regular meetings to hear delegations from members of the public. Advanced registration is required by noon on the Friday prior to the meeting date. A written copy of the comments that we presented must be included at the time of registration. Delegations may speak to agenda items or other subject matters that are within the jurisdiction of the board. I will now proceed with the first registered public delegate, Mr. Robin Brown.
Hello,
Mr. Brown.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can now hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Well, great to hear there's 8 delegations today. That's fantastic. This month, I'm here to talk about layered policing, as described by Jeff Shantz in his March 2021 Spring Magazine article titled, "Layered Policing Expands Police Amid Calls to Defund." So Shantz says, quote, "In response to community calls to defund police and fund necessary social resources, cities across the country have instituted layered policing. From Lethbridge to Saskatoon to Kitchener-Waterloo, this would actually deploy more police throughout the community and embed policing in everyday social life, all while presenting a model in which social services are framed as policing partnerships. Layered policing is not a reform, nor is it an alternative or new model of policing. It is expanded policing, reaching throughout community spaces and everyday practices. It intrudes into streets, schools, malls, workplaces, and sports groups. It combines police crime prevention volunteers, business-funded police street ambassadors, and youth groups. It embeds policing into housing, healthcare, income assistance, education, and other services. It hides behind a distorted appeal to diversity or reaching vulnerable communities in order to further police poor and racialized people," unquote. So the Ottawa Police has responded to calls to defund the police with layered policing, funded by annual budget increases from you and previous boards of between $12 and $14 million a year from 2020 to 2023, which they used to hire 245 new officers. This included a $14 million increase for the 2021 budget that was approved in November 2020, 5 months after George Floyd was murdered. These new officers have joined existing ones, deployed throughout the community and embedded in everyday social life, all framed as policing partnerships with social service agencies, like the OPS's new Byward Market Neighborhood Operations Center. Police were embedded in schools before the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, Ottawa's largest school board, ended its school resource officer program following a human rights-based evaluation that found that armed police officers in schools were harmful to Black, Indigenous, Middle Eastern, and LGBTQ students. Despite calls to significantly reduce police involvement in responding to people experiencing mental health crises, the police have successfully taken steps to remain fully embedded in doing that too. And now I will pause for the time it would have taken me to deliver the next part of my delegation, which Chair Fekirani has barred me from saying. And just as the police have remained embedded in mental health response, they've also continued to expand their presence via their #1 vehicle, community policing. The OPS's community policing initiatives have gone by many names over the years: neighborhood officers, community officers, neighborhood resource teams, and the district model of neighborhood officers, and others. And the OPS is once again rebranding community policing by reintroducing the district model. The OPS says the district model is based on its 2024 budget community consultations that they say revealed a need for greater engagement and officer visibility in communities across the city. That means more officers, including in the Ballard Market at the OPS's new operations center. It recently opened in the Rideau Center. And Chief Stubbs said the center won't be police focused, but rather will be, quote, will be a community center that happens to have police in it, unquote. Layered policing is also evident in the police's leading role in the city's crime prevention initiatives, including addressing street violence and gangs. The OPS was on the board of Crime Prevention Ottawa before City Council supposedly dissolved CPO in July 2023. However, a recent CPO report says CPO will be rebranded as Spire Ottawa, not dissolved as City Council voted to do, and says, quote, the CPO, Community Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee, and its institutional partners will work to build trusted relationships with community members, unquote. One of those institutional partners is apparently the Ottawa Police, as the report says, quote, law enforcement. Encourage law enforcement staff and officers to become mentors and volunteer time in schools to deliver violence prevention presentations, unquote. So it appears the police are using their position on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee to try to re-embed themselves in schools. And while the OPS continues to embed itself deeper and deeper in Ottawa's social fabric and gets millions of dollars from the provincial and federal governments to do so, what they're not doing is making anyone safer by reducing things like gun violence. They keep assuring us there's no threat to public safety at this time, but there is. The Ottawa Police Service...
Mr. Brown, you just 5 minutes. So at this point, do you want to just say one concluding sentence, one line, and then we'll open it up to questions or comments from board?
No problem. Yeah. So I end with my standard line. It's time to start reimagining community safety by shifting money away from policing to things that actually respect people's human rights and keep us all safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Brown, for your delegation today. We will now ask the second delegate, Brian Melanson, to join us. Mr. Melanson.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, and now we can see you as well.
Okay,
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, hello. My name is Brian Melanson. I'm a resident of Lowertown. I lived here since September of 2017, and I'm in support of the core program that is going to be voted on. I'd like to bring attention to some serious issues that have been plaguing our buildings at 110 Coburg and 123 Augusta. I feel that the rights of drug dealers always supersedes my right to have a reasonable enjoyment of life. There are 4 points I'd like to bring up. It's the violence, vagrancy, drug dealing, and noise pollution. The substance use dilemma is of great concern for those who reside in Lowertown. Fortunately, at this point, we have brought together many people that can finally make a change for the better. all entities, including OPS, OCH, Office of Bytown, and Council, all need to be on the same page in order to find a solution. I have been living at one since September 2017, and overall it's been quite peaceful until there's dealing that goes out of several units, but this unit is extremely troublesome, and I filed several complaints against him. The traffic is nonstop. Yelling, screaming, car horns, and violence happen at any hour. Clientele linger throughout our buildings. I have not had a full night's sleep since this person has moved in. His unit also attracts outsiders that frequent our buildings and give them a place to use. The Coburg Lounge, stairwells, lobby, and elevator areas are places where the homeless drug users like to converge. They defecate, they urinate, and they sleep there. They stake out our apartments and they wait for an opportunity to rob us. Many of these people are unapproachable and are violent in nature. Now, many tenants are afraid to leave their units. I'm one of them. I have an expensive e-bike and it's always being eyed. On one occasion, I heard them talking about turning me over and stealing it from me. It's the fear of the unknown and what we might run into once we leave our apartments. This is the main reason why I formed a safety committee last year in our buildings, but unfortunately, nothing positive has ever come of it. Some units seem to be the culprit of many repeated offenses. These problematic tenants must be dealt with accordingly. OCH Security and OPS receiving several dozen complaints against one unit should be observed and acted upon. These are crimes in progress, and they should be treated as such. Once these tenants are dealt with, the drug traffic will cease. I can finally have a reasonable enjoyment of living in my dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melanson. I saw Vice Chair Carr had her hand up. Was it because it was freezing or was it?
Yeah, I had my hand up, but I didn't know if I was the only one that was struggling with a lot of the sound, if it was going in and out, and I missed some of the context, but that's the primary reason I had my hand up. But now that Mr. Melanson is here and my hand is up. So you did mention it was an Ottawa community housing building, correct?
Yes, yes.
And I'm also on the OCH board as well as being on the police board. Have you been in contact with OCH security frequently about these issues?
I'm in contact with them daily.
Daily.
And I'm hoping that he can get evicted, but nothing's happened yet. You know?
Okay.
And the traffic's still nonstop.
Okay, so it's primarily your concern in addressing here the examples is really the one tenant in your building that's contributing to the social disorder.
He's not the only one, but he has to be the worst.
Okay.
Because 3 o'clock in the morning, when people are yelling at his window, because they have their needs or whatever, he lets them in the building. They go into the stairwells, they shoot up there, and they defecate, they urinate, and then when you come across these people, they're violent.
Yeah. Okay. No, understood. And certainly, I have had similar experiences in areas of my ward where we've had meetings with the OCH and OPH and Ottawa Police Services together, and there's these complex care. So appreciate that. I'm going to note. I think it was in your written delegation, but can you just tell me the name of your building? Is it McDonald Gardens? No.
McDonald Manor.
McDonald Manor. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do a bit of a follow-up. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Thanks for having me.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Melanson, for bringing your issue to our attention. Very much appreciated, as the Vice Chair stated.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our third delegate is Christine Vincent.
Thank you, Mayor Sutcliffe, Chair and Chief Stubbs, and members of the Ottawa Police Services Board. My name is Christine Vincent. I'm a 71-year-old senior. I was born and raised in Ottawa. I've presently lived in Lower Town since 2010. I'm in support of the core program that is going to be voted on. I want to discuss 3 points. Safety. I live in social housing, which is all that I can afford at 303 King Edward Avenue. This is ground zero for the drug and homeless crisis, which I wish to speak about. I love living in Lower Town as I'm close to all the necessary day-to-day requirements that I need. Years ago, I first worked as a security guard, and that past experience has been very helpful in the situation that I find myself in today with the homeless. I'm a mother of 5 children and now a grandmother of 5 grandchildren. Upon visiting me one day, my daughter and her husband saw firsthand the crazy neighborhood I live in. My daughter and her husband are now fearful of bringing my grandchildren to come down here to see me. I used to take them to the beautiful parks and playgrounds we've had down here in Lower Town. This is a pleasure in life I miss. I now have to go to them to visit. As a senior, I fear for my safety at times. I've seen firsthand the violent episodes of the drugs and homeless when they explode when on drugs or desperate for a hit. I wish to give an example of the violence we face here. As a senior, I have a German Shepherd service dog for my mobility issues, PTSD, and diabetic. I've had homeless people come up and yell in her face and slap her while waiting for the light to change. Also, my service dog has an older brother, also a German Shepherd, that lives in Lower Town also. He was also meant to be a service dog. However, the homeless got to him first. The dog had a drug overdose due to loose discarded street drugs and was also threatened and hurt with knives within the area. A senior friend in a wheelchair told me the other day he was accosted by a homeless man who ripped his cup holder with a special bracket he bought to hold his cup right off his wheelchair and took it. He had no way of stopping him and has now purchased a service dog to protect him and ward off offenders. Last week, there were 5 overdoses within 1 block of my residence. People do not feel safe and are finding ways to protect themselves. There is a show on every street and every corner in Lower Town with all the homeless. People living down here don't even have to ever watch TV. It is all around us, especially the constant show of the sirens of our emergency workers. I also have nothing but praise for our emergency workers. They have all been stretched to the limit. Time and time again, I see them on the ground with a drug overdose, trying to bring that person back from the brink of death. I would like to give a shout out to our police and paramedics and firefighters for the selfless work that they do in trying to keep us all safe, which in today's world is a tall order. Lower Town is now seen as neglected jewel of the city of Ottawa within blocks of Parliament Hill, even though plans are in the works to greatly improve the area, Highward Market and Lower Town. As long as the drug and homeless crisis exists in the shadow of the rest of the city, we will never get back to the standard or even live up to it as one of the most beautiful capital cities in the world. The Ottawa I grew up in welcomed the rest of the world with open arms. It was people friendly. It was known around the world as a clean city with lots of wonderful green space and a city we could all be proud of. Lack of police. Let us all do this together and bring back the postcard image of Ottawa. We need the resources to bring the city back to its full potential. We need all hands on deck. There are so many people in Lower Town who are fearful of coming out in their homes for many reasons and walking in the area. The outrageous behavior of the drug addicts and the drug dealers are making it unbearable most times to live here in Lower Town. Although I know our police resources are a thin line of blue with a city our size, they are desperately needed here in Lower Town. I praise the police chief for doing his best to set up the mini police office community hub in the Rideau Centre, along with the mayor and city council, and especially our city councillors, Stephanie Plante, for bringing our resources to the forefront to the city on all the residents' behalf in Lower Town. If I could have a wish list, it would be that the police department get new recruits, including the 4 paw officers and a couple of good drug dogs. We are vulnerable and need the assistance of the police in Lower Town. I have a lot more to say. However, over the years and seeing the deterioration of Lower Town, I started a YouTube channel on the drugs and homeless in Lower Town. There is an old expression, seeing is believing. My channel for those unbelievers can get an abrupt insight on what it's like to living at ground zero. Please open your eyes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Vincent. Appreciate your words and coming to the board to delegate. I see Vice Chair Carr may have a question or a comment.
Yeah, I think it was more of a comment. Thank you very much for your delegation. I appreciate you coming out today and recognizing when you speak about the drug crisis and the homelessness crisis that this is really a multifaceted crisis and needs, certainly policing is a part of it, but we certainly need as city councillors to address the situation with homelessness, to address the situation with social disorder and to work with other levels of government on that missing funding for social services and housing that has been lacking for over the last 30 years and has led us down this. So certainly appreciate how you've seen it evolve and go downhill, and hopefully we'll see the core model be able to respond with those needs related to policing, and hopefully we'll continue as a city council, for those of us that are city councillors, to work around the table to address those social disorder and housing issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Are there any other comments, questions? If not, Ms. Vincent, I really want to thank you for delegating and sharing your views and your concerns with the board. And as you see, the Ottawa Police Service members are also on the call. So thank you very much for delegating today.
Thank you.
Our next delegate is Sandra Milton.
Thank you.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi. Hi.
Welcome.
Thank
welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Sutcliffe, Chair, Chief Stubbs, and members of the Ottawa Police Services Board. My name is Sandra Milton. I'm a resident of Lower Town. I'm Vice President of Lower Town Community Association and Chair of the Safety Committee. The Lower Town Community Association values the police officers currently working on the streets throughout Lower Town. We welcome the establishment of a neighbourhood operations centre that has been described as a community centre that happens to have the police in it. We anticipate with pleasure the deployment of highly visible patrols in the areas known to be problematic for the community. As you're aware, Lower Town currently has a reputation as a place that is unsafe for residents and for visitors. It has a high rate of crime combined with a significant level of homelessness. We understand that the police cannot deal alone with the complexity of issues faced by individuals experiencing homelessness, mental health, and/or drug addictions. But being visible on our streets and being trained to interact with our diverse population can help. And being connected to the existing outreach, housing, and other social service can make a big difference. In my various community roles, I hear from residents regularly. Let me share a few stories with you. I will not use real names for privacy reasons. Jolene, at 9 years of age, regularly spots needles and has become afraid to walk to her favourite dollar store, even when accompanied by an adult. Justin attends the University of Ottawa and often has evening classes with no bus available on his route. He walks out of his direct route home to avoid areas where he has been harassed. Tim, a regular drug user, is still haunted by the memory of witnessing 5 overdoses within a city block. Matilda has been followed in daylight hours after work by a male carrying a large stick and shouting obscenities. Kavi is unable to get insurance for damage to his business after 3 broken windows. Mira is closing her shop after her staff were threatened and multiple items stolen. Bill is moving from OCH apartment after being threatened in his lobby. And Lila is afraid to leave her apartment due to people trying to enter the building illegally. Please help our community. Our current population, whether in homes, shelter, or encampments, are feeling unsafe. We now have several streets where sidewalks feel like no-go zones. We have drivers fearful of accidentally injuring random, unfocused walkers. We look forward to having a nearby base of operations and coordination and community interaction. We are happy to support proactive patrols, and we welcome focused enforcement efforts. We have a tremendous relationship with the police, Acting Sergeant LeMay, Constable Kennedy, and Acting Sergeant Stam. They know us, the community, and the in-house by name. Our community police officers know this area better than anyone, and we have great respect for the work they do. From the language that I've read and the plans that the police are proposing around this, the language is about collaboration, about partnerships, about support. We support Council Plant and other councillors to also support the bigger picture that needs to be tackled by City Council, which is each of our 24 wards to help people before they fail. Now I have a few questions for clarification to you. Will there be a consistent team that the community will recognize? One, how will these police officers coordinate, collaborate with existing services? And when will the project be evaluated?
Thank you, Ms. Milton, for your delegation. At this time, I'm going to open it up for questions or comments from the board members. Seeing none, I want to thank you and the Lower Town Community Association for delegating today and sharing your concerns with the board. And as you know, there'll be further presentations throughout the evening on various issues. So thank you again for sharing your concerns, for expressing your the issues that you want to get further information on. And we'll take all of that into consideration as the evening unfolds with different agenda items.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next delegate is Briet FY. Bonjour, Briet.
Bonjour.
On peut commencer.
Bonjour, je tiens à remercier le maire Sutcliffe, le président Fakirani et le chef Stubbs, ainsi que les membres de la commission du service de police d'Ottawa. I will speak in French and I can answer any comments or questions in English. Je m'appelle Briet FY. Je réside dans le marché bail depuis 2004. Je soutiens activement le programme CORE sur lequel nous parlons aujourd'hui. J'aimerais prendre cette occasion pour aborder 2 points en particulier. Je souhaite vous parler aujourd'hui pour exprimer mes préoccupations croissantes concernant les conditions de santé et de sécurité dans notre quartier. Donc, j'habite, au fil des ans, j'ai remarqué une détérioration significative des conditions sanitaires et de sécurité dans le marché bail, particulièrement au cours des dernières années. J'ai toujours été heureuse. J'habitais dans un condo près de la rue York et j'adore le marché, j'adore sa location, j'adore c'est vibrant, c'est dynamique, c'est varié, et j'ai acheté une maison en septembre dernier sur la rue Clarence. Et c'est devenu, la situation est devenue très alarmante et m'affecte profondément maintenant dans ma qualité de vie, ma santé mentale et physique. Chaque jour, je suis confrontée à des micro-agressions, du vandalisme qui affectent ma qualité de vie, des intrusions sur ma propriété. Des individus utilisent ma propriété comme une toilette, comme un endroit pour flâner, pour dormir, pour consommer de la drogue. Je vis quotidiennement des micro-agressions. Je suis entourée de comportements impulsifs, agressifs, qui me met dans des situations où parfois j'ai dû retarder mon départ pour le travail parce que j'ose pas sortir de chez moi, parce que j'ai peur de sortir, parce que quelqu'un, un homme qui est sous influence, avec comportement agressif, une seringue à la main. J'ai été de nombreuses fois en retard pour le travail, ce qui commence à affecter ma performance au travail. Il y a beaucoup d'intrusions chez moi. Je sais que maintenant, ils savent que je suis là en plein milieu de la nuit. Ils viennent cogner sur ma porte, sur ma fenêtre, sur ma porte, sonner la sonnette à répétition, puis rire, puis faire des menaces qui me font que je retourne pas au lit. Je finis ma nuit en pleurant toute seule, en me demandant comment je vais traverser tout ça. J'arrive pas à aller au travail le lendemain. J'ai peur, j'ai de la difficulté à sortir. J'avais l'habitude de vivre dans le marché parce que c'est un endroit super pour bien situé. J'allais faire du jogging, mais maintenant je peux pas quitter le matin pour aller faire du jogging parce que j'ai peur. Je peux pas y aller trop tard le soir parce que je me sens pas en sécurité. Et à partir du moment où je quitte ma maison présentement, comme aujourd'hui, je suis continuellement sur mon téléphone à surveiller, à regarder mes caméras de sécurité pour m'assurer que mes biens, que ma propriété, que mes choses sont correctes. De faire des réseaux avec mes voisins pour qu'on s'aide et qu'on se surveille les uns des autres. Ces situations sont très stressantes, dérangeantes, génèrent des coûts très élevés pour la surveillance constante, les réparations nécessaires, mais plus encore, elle a un impact dévastateur sur ma qualité de vie, ma santé. J'arrive plus à dormir correctement, je me réveille plusieurs fois par nuit, où je me fais réveiller, j'ai peur, je suis stressée. Ça affecte ma vie personnelle, ça affecte mon travail. J'ai un degré d'anxiété qui est très élevé. Difficulté à me concentrer et maintenir mes relations sociales qui sont grandement affectées. J'ai un partenaire qui ne vit pas avec moi puis qui hésite à venir me rendre visite parce qu'il y a 2 jeunes filles. Puis il y a des craintes qu'elles se blessent avec des seringues usagées ou d'autres objets dangereux qu'on retrouve un peu partout. Ma mère qui vit à Montréal veut plus venir me voir chez moi parce qu'elle s'est fait poursuivre dans la rue avec des objets, avec une bouteille. Elle s'est fait faire des menaces. Elle a peur, donc elle veut pas venir me rendre visite. J'ai des locataires chez moi parce que j'ai une petite maison avec 2 logements. J'ai un locataire qui
Il y a 10 secondes.
Parfait.
Il reste, oui.
Mes locataires ont des enfants, ont décidé de quitter le logement pour aller s'installer dans un autre quartier. Je suis désespérée de trouver une solution, puis je vous implore de prendre des mesures de façon urgente là, pour nous aider. Pas dans 3 ans, pas des mesures à long terme, mais quelque chose qui fait qu'on peut vivre au jour le jour pour que notre quartier garde sa sécurité, que je puisse avoir une vie, là. Merci.
Merci, Ms. Fonti, pour les enjeux que vous identifiez. Est-ce qu'il y a les commentaires ou les questions? Vice Chair Carr.
Oh, oui, merci, Chair. Et puis, merci beaucoup pour votre délégation. Vous avez décrit certaines situations que vous rencontrez presque quotidiennement, ça semble. Les personnes sous l'influence, les sans-abri, ainsi qu'un certain nombre d'agressions et d'intrusions à votre domicile. Et puis, j'ai entendu également que vous avez peur de faire du jogging ou de sortir trop tard le soir et qu'il y a des conséquences pour vous-même sur vos activités sociales ou vos relations avec les autres. Alors, ce que j'aimerais savoir, c'est quelles sont, selon vous, les actions que la nouvelle équipe du corps peut entreprendre pour vous aider à soyez plus confortable dans le marché? Qu'est-ce que vous cherchez de l'équipe?
I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for help. I'm looking for solutions, and I'm not the one to bring the solution to bring up the solution, but I want to feel safe. I want to be sure that kids who are walking around, I find needles, I find crack pipes, I find that on my yard. I had the 10-year-old finding the crack pipe, and before she touched it, I saw her, and I was just, don't touch that, and and I'm just worried. I'm worried for myself as well. I know that just the solution is not just having the police. I'm very aware. I was living on New York just behind the Salvation Army. I had never had any problems. I decided to live in the market. Homeless people were not the problem. They're alive. They are allowed to live, and they need help and they need the support. It's the violence right now that I've never witnessed. I was really friendly in the past, like when I moved in the market, and now I'm being facing the violence. I feel the threat, and just I cannot go outside because they're on my porch. And every time I've been calling the police, I've seen a very gentle approach. I've been a very comprehensive approach, but I cannot call like with the suggestion is that I'm calling 10 times a day. I'm calling in the midnight because someone is banging on my window and treading, and I'm worried that just at one point there will be a reaction when they will finally break in and kill me and hurt me. I don't know. And I have tenants who are leaving right now because she's working early in the morning. She has to leave at 6 a.m. and she has a young daughter, and she's stressed, and she's encountered so many of those stories, and she wants to break her lease. I cannot say no. I understand, and I want her and her daughter to feel safe, and they're leaving right now, and I don't know what's the solution. I know it's a global solution, it's a long-term solution, and we have to work all together for that. But also we need something right now as well, that I can have a life. Or I don't know what to do. I'm entitled to exist as well as they are, but it's not the problem is not that, it's the violence and
the violence. Yeah. Okay. No, thanks. No, I certainly understand how awful this is for you in the situation. I just was wondering if there was one thing in particular you were hoping to see out of the core program, because certainly the issues are so varied and complex. And I appreciate you taking the time today to come out and speak to us. I know it's difficult to talk about that, but thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. Any other questions or comments? So, Ms. Fonte, it's clearly having a tremendous impact on you and your life and on the life of your neighbors. And so really appreciate you coming to the board and delegating and sharing your concerns. We know it's real for you personally, and we really appreciate it. And please continue to do so. Please continue to share your concerns with us. We'll hear further presentations this evening, and I know the police service is working, recognizing the issues that the neighborhood is facing. I'll just leave it at that. But thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour votre délégation. Our next delegate is Louise Mallet. Hi, Louise.
Yes, hi.
Hi, go ahead. Thank you for delegating today. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm in support of the police corps program. Mary Sutcliffe, Chair, Ottawa Police. Excuse me. I'm 70 years old. I'm partially blind. I get up and I go to work every day still. I used to work for the government for 35 years, and I retired, and now I just work for a senior center in Gloucester. My concern is I'm very stressed out to go to work in the morning, especially when the time change and it's dark, because I leave the house at 10 to 7. And I live in the La Salle Co-op. And in the beginning, I used to walk up King Edward to Rideau to get my bus to Gloucester. I used to enjoy the walk until I realized that it's not safe for me to do so, because various incidents that occurred while I walked, i.e. Shepherds of Good Hope, they're right there. You can imagine the variety of people, individuals in front of the building each day. I've been followed, harassed for money. These people are desperate for money for their fix, so God only knows what they'll do to get it. Once at the bus stop, the stop is at King Edward and Rideau Street, right beside the methadone clinic. That's extremely, extremely scary. They're all there. They're all exchanging their drugs. I saw people shooting up, people overdosing, dead people, you name it. Like, I shouldn't have to see this first thing in the morning when I'm going to work. So what I did was I sent a letter to the clinic asking them to beef up the security outside the clinic. They replied they couldn't do anything and would try to get the police to patrol more often. So I got to the point where I was so stressed out and scared that I would take another route to another different stop, but that did not help either. They're everywhere. They're just everywhere. So I'd like to mention that I am, as I said, I'm blind one eye, so it's difficult for me to look around to see if, you know, if someone's following me. I have to look down all the time, so because I could fall. So it's very, very, I have to be vigilant. So most of the time, I can't see who's around me. So the bus shelters around Lower Town are the people's, these homeless people's, they refuge there. I'm now taking a bus not far from my house down St. Patrick to Rideau. Then I cross the Rideau to Cumberland bus stop. So last week was the last straw for me. Upon arriving at the stop, the shelter was full of dirty clothes, bottles, empty food containers, needles, and human feces. I should not have to be scared and put through all this to go to work. I was born and raised in Lower Town, and I shouldn't be scared to walk the street of my city. Something has to change. I support, like I said, the police corps, and I'm ready to help out in any way I can to regain our beautiful downtown. I worked, like, as I mentioned, 35 years for the government for a department called Seized Property Management Directorate, where I and other colleagues manage goods from drug seizures throughout Canada until court decisions. So I know the drugs that are out there, and it's like it's never going to stop. And it's all because of drugs. So I don't know. I just thought I'd bring my delegation and share with you what I go through every day for the last 2 years, especially. Now it's not so bad because it's light out in the morning, so I can see. But when time change comes, I'm so scared and stressed out that I leave later for my job. You know, people shouldn't have to be scared like that. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mallet, for delegating to the board, sharing your concerns, sharing your issues with the board. Are there any questions or comments from board members?
Well, like I said, where I live is the La Salle Co-op, and almost every day we have a Facebook page, and something happens. You know, they either try to get into the cars, they try the doors, it's very scary, and it's very dangerous because we don't know what these people are up to, you know. Like last summer, there was one that was following me with a crowbar, and just, you know, so I crossed the street because I didn't know what else to do. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Go on.
So thank you for having me and listening to me.
No, so I see there's no questions or comments. So I just want to thank you, Ms. Mallet, for delegating today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegate is Pat Hurley.
Hello?
Hi,
Hi.
we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Okay, got it. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Sutcliffe, Chief Stubbs, Board Chair, members of the Ottawa Police Board for giving me this opportunity to present to the board. My name is Pat Hurley, and I'm a resident of the Byward Market, living very close to the Salvation Army. I've lived here since 1997. I support the proposed core program that is going to be voted on today, as I strongly feel something urgently needs to be done, and this is a good first step. I want to talk about living in the Byward Market and community safety. The area has changed since the pandemic. The number of people hanging out or living on the street and at times blocking the sidewalks on both sides of George Street has increased substantially. Many are either drunk or on drugs, and it can be very uncomfortable walking by them as they sit or stand on the sidewalk in groups, with some sleeping bags, garbage bags, other bags and tarps. It is especially difficult for those with physical disabilities or seniors to get by them. There are also those who ask for money, and they can become very aggressive. And a few times I've been followed by a person yelling at me for not giving. And ever present are the drug dealers. They are like vultures. Every day we can see deals going on. It's so disturbing. I know very few of my neighbors who will walk in the area at night, and my friends in the suburbs are reluctant to come to the market. On the occasion when I've walked at night to the NAC or a local restaurant, I keep as close to the lighted areas as possible. It may not be dangerous in reality, but it certainly feels that way. In the market area, people walk it across the street without looking, but on George Street is particularly dangerous. Frequently, you see somebody who has been sitting on the sidewalk, then all of a sudden runs across the street, or if they are high, they stand in the street, stagger, or yell. Last week when I was driving home, I followed two people who were walking in the middle of the street for the entire block, oblivious to what was going on around them. It's very dangerous for them and for the drivers. As for our building, I know I'm very fortunate to live here, and we've always had a security guard or concierge at the entrance. Now they are needed more than ever, as not only do people want to sit in front of the building, leave garbage, beer cans, drug paraphernalia, but the driveway into our building has become a public bathroom. I realize there are very few places these people can go. That's another issue. There are other activities that go on near our garbage bins, and our security guards have to be very vigilant to make sure there is nobody hiding near those bins. A few years ago, we joined the Salvation Army and local businesses, and we pay monthly to contract for private security guards to patrol outside our buildings. With the taxes we pay in this building, we shouldn't have to pay for that. Second item is community safety. I know there are the police in the area. I haven't seen as many walking around lately because during the winter, they stay mostly in their cars, parked together in parking lots. I think the cars could circulate more, but I'm also aware that there are officers specifically assigned to this area. However, so many times these officers are not working in the area. They are away on training, downtown protests, special assignments, vacations, sick leave. I would be surprised if half the officers that are assigned to the market area are actually in the area at any given time. We need police who will be in the area, become known to businesses, the residents, and to those who are on the street. We need their help to make sure the sidewalks are not blocked, provide advice, or know who to contact in the community if their help is needed. Most importantly, they can help deal with the drug dealers. To my mind, these are the most dangerous people in the city. We need the police for many situations. We need more support workers too. Living downtown, one can expect some problems on the street, but the drug problem is rampant. There are so many more homeless, and there is nearly not enough support for those. There's a lot of talk about these problems, but we see these problems every day. The people on the street are someone's son, daughter, father, sister. They need our help. With the Neighborhood Operations Center, the police will be close, not running back and forth to the headquarters on Elgin Street. They will be closer to the community partners of the Integrated Community Situation Table. We need help in the downtown. I am hoping that the proposed core program will be a step in the right direction to deal with these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Really appreciate your delegation this evening. Are there any questions or comments from board members?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next delegate is Natalie Bergen.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Okay. Start video. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Thakarani, Chief Stubbs, Mayor Sutcliffe, and members of the board. My name is Natalie Bergen. I am a mother from Barrhaven. I am here to delegate in support of the core initiative agenda item. I believe that this is a positive step. However, more can be done. I would like to introduce our new advocacy nonprofit group, Trace Soleil, Tracer les drogues mélangées. We are a team of 3 resilient mothers who have lost our sons from laced drugs and are transcending our grief by bringing changes to how we are responding to the drug overdose pandemic. We were propelled to do this advocacy because of how our children and families were treated by the police. Our experience reveals that the police approach to drug overdoses re-victimizes our children and families. I came home from work on April 1st, 2022, to find my beautiful 21-year-old son non-responsive in his bed. Called 911 and started CPR. I later learned that William had been dead for several hours, and the images of how my son looked continued to haunt me daily. William died from a designer benzo called flubromazolam, which he thought was Xanax. This drug does not respond to Narcan, and William was the only known victim of this drug in Ottawa at the time of his death. I would like to thank Constable Andrew Barrett, who was at our home immediately within minutes of calling 911. Constable Barrett's compassion and individual care for our family was stellar. His support and quiet presence during those moments of tragedy will continue to shoulder our grief throughout our lifetime. Unfortunately, our experience with the process left us with unanswered questions and no justice for our children. My colleague Janet, secretary for Trace Soleil, lost her 38-year-old son in October of 2022. Janet did not find out about her son's death until December 2022, only because a teacher at his French class reached out to a family member after not seeing him for several weeks. Her son's body remained at the General Campus City Morgue for over 5 weeks. Janet was told that James was homeless and did not have identification, which was not the case. He had his ID and address on his person. We have organized Trace Soleil into 4 pillars. Pillar number 1, Trace Soleil is advocating for a federal level intake team where all overdose deaths are immediately investigated and linked to their source. This would eliminate the inconsistencies in how police forces respond to overdose deaths. Pillar number 2, we are looking at existing laws as well as requiring legal and police changes that can secure charges and convictions for those responsible for selling and supplying laced drugs that lead to death. The criminal code requires changes that will support the police. There is a growing trend across Canada to charge drug dealers with manslaughter and criminal negligence. In 2019, 65 charges were laid, an increase of 700% from 2016. Most of these charges came from the Ontario Provincial Police. In November of 2023, a convicted drug dealer in Aurelia, Ontario, was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 8 years in jail after selling a fatal amount of fentanyl that killed a 31-year-old man in March 2020. Justice Bell stated that the convicted drug dealer, quote, contributed to untold misery.
Ms. Bergen, thank you for sharing your story, and I know it's not easy to relive some of this. Your 5 minutes has just come up. And I know you have 2 more pillars you want to conclude on. Rest assured that the board members have received your written submissions. So we have read them. If you could just sum up in just quickly in 1 or 2 sentences your presentation and conclude, that would be very much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So I worked in the mental health field as a hospital social worker, and I've seen what the system is doing right now and how they're responding. There are drug dealers that are coming to the hospitals waiting for the patients to come down on their passes. These drug dealers are waiting for them. They're going to NA groups, AA groups, high school parties. Something needs to be done. There needs to be consequences. This is an opportunity for the Ottawa Police to keep vulnerable citizens safe.
Thank you, Ms. Bergen. And thank you very much. And thank you for sharing your story. And I know it cannot be easy, but I think the advocacy work that is coming out of it, I hope is helpful for you and others who are facing this. I see Vice Chair Carr. Sir.
Hi, Natalie. First of all, I just wanted to thank you very much for sharing your story. It must be difficult to tell it over and over again, and you're so brave to do that. I have a 20-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son, and I couldn't possibly imagine the losses that you have faced, and you're able to go out and talk about it in order to make sure that it doesn't happen to any more people. I just wanted to acknowledge that I read your correspondence that Chair Fakarani alluded to, and I think he and I are going to meet with you, and I was very intrigued by a number of statements in there, and I've got a lot of questions. For example, the fact that because it was purchased on Snapchat and through video, that there can be no proof of how it was purchased, and therefore no arrest. All of those things were really interesting to me. So I will be following up with the chair, and hopefully we'll have a chance to meet with you and have a more fulsome discussion. But thank you so much for coming today to share your story and for your bravery.
We William didn't get it from Snapchat or anything. He went to a bar in Barrhaven where there's a TV group.
Okay, with another part in it where it talked about it being purchased. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes, you're right. Exactly.
Another story. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Wait. I think the Chief Stubbs may have a comment or a question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fakarani, and Natalie. Thank you for delegating, and it's obviously tough to hear your story. I was contacted a couple of weeks ago by somebody in the community who advised me of your group, the mothers that are together, and that you wanted to meet with the police. And my message back was yes. And he was going to send me the information, and I haven't seen it myself, so I don't know if I missed it or maybe it hasn't been sent yet. But I just wanted to just reach out with this opportunity in case I did lose it or it didn't get sent, that we will meet with you if that works, and perhaps at the board office they have your contact information and we can connect that way.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again for delegating today, and really appreciate you sharing the story with your story and the advocacy work that you're undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes our public delegations. We're going to move on to number 6 of our agenda, which is inquiries. Are there any inquiries? Seeing none, we're going right into items of business. So 7.1 is the chair's report, which we will hold. 7.2, the chief's verbal report will be held. 7.3, the Auditor General's presentation we're holding. 7.4 is also the presentation on core strategy and neighborhood operations center, which we're holding. 7.5, Canadian Association of Police Governance Annual Conference and Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Annual Summit attendance and sponsorship. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, there is just one change to the recommendation, or 2 changes. Member Doucette has indicated an interest in attending the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Annual Summit and Member Donaldson is looking to attend the Canadian Association of Police Governance Conference. Therefore, I would like to amend number 1 and number 2 of the recommendations to add their names. It is therefore now recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve 1, the attendance of S. Fakirani, M. Carr, H. Saya, and D. Donaldson at the 2024 Canadian Association of Police Governance Conference being held in Halifax, Nova Scotia from August 8th to 11th, 2024. And number 2, the attendance of S. Fakirani, P. Henschel, H. Saya, and M. Doucette at the 2024 Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Annual Summit being held in Halifax, Nova Scotia from August 11th to 13th, 2024. And number 3, a $1,000 friend sponsorship for the Canadian Association of Police Governance 2024 Annual Conference. Is the amended recommendation carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. Update 7.6, update on review of the board policy legal services. Would anyone like to hold this item? Seeing none, it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve the amended policy attached in this report as reviewed by the board's Policy and Governance Committee. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. 7.7 board policies for approval, Community Safety and Policing Act. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, it is therefore recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve the board policies attached in this report in keeping with the requirements of the Community Safety and Policing Act and as reviewed by the board's Policy and Governance Committee. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Right. 7.8, delegated authority for extension of contracts with Garda Canada Security Court to provide security screening personnel at the Ottawa courthouse. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board delegate authority to the Chief of Police to renew the contract with Garda Canada Security Corps to provide security screening personnel at the single point of access at the Ottawa courthouse for the period of June 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025. Is the item carried?
Carried.
Thank you. 7.9, renewal of the memorandum of understanding between the Ottawa Police Service Board and the City of Ottawa Transportation Services. Would anyone like to hold this item? It is therefore recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve the continuation of the OC Transpo Special Constable Program under the same terms as the current memorandum of understanding until September 30th, 2024. Is the item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. Review of operations February 16th to 18th, 2024. Would anyone like to hold this item? I'm going to hold this item. And I'm looking at this item just for some commentary from the chief. That's the reason for holding that. So this is the review of operations February 16th, 18th, 2020. 7-11 financial status report, first quarter 2024. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, it is therefore recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive this report for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Thank you. 7.12 performance report, first quarter 2024. Would anyone like to hold this item?
I would.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Member Curry. 7.12 will be held. 7.13 sworn promotion process. 2023 annual report. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, it is therefore recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board received the Sworn Promotion Process 2023 Annual Report for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Thank you. Workforce Management Report, first quarter 2024. To be held or not to be held?
Hold.
Seven point 15, Legal Services Report, first quarter 2024. Would anyone like to hold this item? It is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive the Legal Services Report, first quarter 2024 for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Received.
Thank you. Outstanding board inquiries, motions, and directions, May 2024. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, it is therefore recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive the outstanding board inquiries, motions, and directions, May 2024 report for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Great, thank you. Letters of commendation, May 2024. We will hold this item. Okay, so we'll go now back to Chair's report. So we're at 7.1 items of business, Chair's report. I want to start off by passing of Diane Deans, our former board chair. So former board chair and city councillor at the time, Diane Deans, passed away on May 14th. She dedicated her 28-year career as a councillor to making the city a better place to live, learn, and grow, including during her time on the police board. And she faced turbulent times on the board. And in this position as chair, the position is very complex with a number of issues. And to face the times of turbulency that she had in her tenure was no doubt very, very difficult. Diane served as the first female chair of the board when she was appointed in December 2018 and took great pride in the role. We extend our deepest condolences to her family and loved ones, and we deeply appreciate her contributions to the board and the community. Move on to Police Week. Police Week ran from May 12th to 18th. The theme this year was Joint Policing, Keep Ontario Safe. I want to take a moment to thank all sworn and civilian members of the service, including the chief and the executive command. The work you do is difficult and extremely valuable, and you deserve to be celebrated for the noble profession you've chosen. Community engagement. I continue to take time to meet with various stakeholders to help inform the work of the board. I had the privilege of attending a meeting with representatives of the Burundi community, a recruit swearing-in ceremony, a meeting of the Community Equity Council, and a community gathering hosted by the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition. This concludes my verbal report. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? It is therefore recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive this report for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you. We will move to 7.2, Chief's verbal report. Chief, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And similar to your start of your report, I wish to extend my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Diane Deans. Diane dedicated her life to helping the people of Ottawa. She had served on City Council since 1994 and was re-elected many times. In January 2019, she became the chair of the Ottawa Police Service Board, and Diane cared deeply for her community and was involved in many committees. Her leadership and commitment helped shape the future of our police service and ensure the safety and well-being of our community. Diane lived a life full of dedicated service and left a lasting legacy on our city. Our thoughts are with those closest to her during this difficult time. The last month has been a very busy operational period for our service. I want to highlight some of the great results for some of these very difficult files. Pour notre service, les quelques dernières semaines ont été très chargées. Dans cette compte rendu, je tiens à souligner le beau travail de la part de nos members. In particular, our homicide unit has been actively investigating several serious cases and homicides, which have resulted in significant charges and developments. On April 19th, Kevin Willington died in a shooting on Birch Avenue in Manor Park at the site of a poker game. After an intense investigation, the homicide unit has charged a 20-year-old man with second-degree murder. Investigators are still working to identify a second suspect involved in this incident. Please contact police if you have any information that could advance this investigation. On May 2nd, emergency crews responded to a fire at 1244 Donald Street, where 2 children and a mother were severely injured by the flames. A 3-year-old girl succumbed to her injuries in hospital 9 days later. The homicide unit has charged a man with both first-degree murder and arson charges. Also on May 2nd, a youth named Ellis Smith was stabbed on Constellation Drive. He died in hospital days later, leading to charges against an 18-year-old man. My heart goes out to the families dealing with these tragic incidents and the loss of loved ones. I commend the homicide unit for their dedication and teamwork in handling these complex and heartbreaking cases. I want to thank all the members of that team as well as the multiple units that support them for their tireless work. Our drug unit conducted a trafficking investigation leading to the arrest of a suspect who was selling large quantities of illegal drugs. On May 10th, police executed a warrant at an address on Canadian Shield Avenue. As a result of the search, police discovered 2 gym bags containing a semi-automatic handgun, a loaded magazine, and separate ammunition, as well as 1.4 kilograms of cocaine, 1.9 kilograms of crystal meth, 1.6 kilograms of fentanyl, as well as a list of other illegal narcotics. The fentanyl seizure is particularly important given the continued increase of overdoses in our city. Already this year, we have been called to 778 overdoses. That's an increase of 87% compared to last year. Our members, who all carry naloxone, have administered it 66 times, saving 63 lives. During the week of May 12th, we celebrated the Ontario Police Week with 3 main community events held throughout the city. Police Week provides an opportunity to showcase and appreciate the tireless efforts of our police members and, importantly, our community partners who work year-round to keep our community safe. La Semaine de la Police nous offre l'occasion de souligner et d'apprécier les efforts des membres de la police et de nos partenaires qui travaillent toute l'année pour la sûreté de nos communautés. This year's theme, as the chair mentioned, Join Policing, Keep Ontario Safe, emphasized the crucial role of law enforcement in maintaining public safety and encouraged community involvement in policing efforts. I joined many members from our team and the community at all 3 community events. They were a great success with a fantastic turnout, which brought police officers and community members closer. L'événement a connu un grand succès grâce à un fantastique taux de participation. De nombreux membres de la collectivité sont venus nous rencontrer, ce qui rendit la semaine encore plus spéciale. Thank you to all for joining us in this celebration. I want to talk a bit about the district revitalization project. Acting Superintendent Kevin Maloney continues to lead this project, developing a new district deployment model in support of the OPS community policing strategy. It is aligned with community expectations and will use iterative design principles. Part 1 of the pilot deployment model launched on May 6th. The focus is to enhance communications with ward councillors and the community. The pilot will further seek to foster geographic ownership, support strong community partnership, and permit a more efficient resource allocation. As part of this pilot, Superintendent Ken Bryden is leading the operations, along with 4 new district inspectors. Inspector Ian Hayes, who is in charge of the West District. He is joined by Inspector Jeff LeBlanc in the Central, Inspector Marc-André Sheehy in the East, and Inspector Isabelle Lemieux in the South. This team is already reaching out and beginning the important task of opening new lines of communication with the community. Tonight, the board will be receiving a presentation on our new community outreach response and engagement strategy known as CORE, which aims to enhance safety in the Byward Market and Rideau Street corridor. Using a precision policing approach, CORE focuses on reducing crime through increased police presence, community engagement, and proactive problem solving. Using data analysis to support police decision-making, CORE focuses on high priority areas and repeat offenders responsible for significant criminal activity. In collaboration with our community partners at the Integrated Community Situation Table, CORE also works to support the most vulnerable by addressing low-level crimes linked to complex issues like substance abuse and mental health. By leveraging evidence-based strategies and community partnerships, CORE will create a safer, more resilient downtown. And as we saw from some of the delegates today, we got lots of work to do, and there's a massive need. So I'm really looking forward to this. This strategy will be coordinated through our new Neighborhood Operations Center on Rideau Street that will be formally opening in the next few weeks. A few weeks ago, we hosted a badge ceremony that showcased 28 new police officers that were initially hired in October 2023. I was honored to welcome this diverse and talented class alongside Police Service Board Chair Salim Fakarani. They are ready to serve the Ottawa community with dedication, professionalism, and passion. Several recruits were raised locally, while others have ties across Canada and internationally, bringing unique perspectives and skills to our team. Today, they hit the road for the first time with their coach officers. I wish them all the best in their career ahead. Aujourd'hui, il prend la route avec les agents d'accompagnement respectifs. Je leur souhaite plein de réussite dans la carrière à venir. Impaired driving continues to be a road safety issue in Ottawa, with 13 fatalities on our roads in 2023 where alcohol and/or drugs were believed to be involved. In the first 4 months of 2024, OPS charged 284 drivers with impaired-related offenses, compared with 228 the previous year. Impaired driving is preventable. We encourage our community members to include arranging a safe and sober ride home in their plans whenever they intend to drink alcohol or use cannabis. Canadian officers have been empowered to demand a breath sample during routine traffic stops absent of any symptoms or evidence of impairment. Our traffic officers will be increasing their use of mandatory alcohol screening when doing traffic enforcement across the city over the summer months. We continue to see many demonstrations and events in Ottawa, putting a major strain on our resources. This past month included a 10-day UN conference, various Middle East crisis events, and of course, the 2-day race throughout the city this past weekend. That particular event, stretching 42 kilometers through the city, required many more resources this year than in past years to ensure participant and spectator safety. With race organizers modifying the route not to include Gatineau, we were required to significantly increase the number of officers during the event. Interoperability amongst partners continues, and we thank them for their patience, engagement, and flexibility with these sometimes unpredictable and last-minute operational plans. During the Israeli Independence Day ceremony at City Hall, our team investigated and charged a female with a hate crime related to the accused pulling a hijab off a lady's head. These types of hate crimes will be fully investigated by the Ottawa Police Service. Over the weekend in Toronto, there was a shooting at a Jewish school, thankfully with no injuries. This is a concerning event and one where we will continue to proactively patrol various religious, school, and higher risk locations across the city to provide the presence that the community is requesting. I want to take a moment to commend the exceptional efforts and collaboration demonstrated by one of our officers and several members of the public during a recent incident. On May 20th, a 67-year-old golfer was enjoying his round at the Riverbend Golf and Country Club when he suddenly collapsed on the 11th hole tee box due to a cardiac arrest. Other men playing golf witnessed the emergency and immediately sprang into action by initiating CPR while alerting authorities for assistance. Upon Officer McCarthy's arrival, He promptly assessed the situation and administered vital defibrillation shocks with precision. As a result of their collective efforts, the man was revived, breathing, and communicating by the time medical personnel arrived on scene. Constable Matthew McCarthy's swift response, along with the actions of the other golfers, saved a man's life. Thank you, Chair Fakarani. Over to you.
Thank you, Chief. Comments or questions from board members? Yeah, I just want to thank, on behalf of the board, thank the service. I know the various events and demonstrations and protests are taking their toll on the service and stretching the service. Just want to thank you and thank the members of the service for their efforts. If no other questions or comments, just want to that we'll take in the recommendation that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive the Chief's report for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you. We will now move on to a presentation by the Auditor General. This is the 2024-2027 audit work plan for the Ottawa Police Service. I'd like to introduce Auditor General Natalie Bergen. Natalie, thank you for joining us this evening and agreeing to the board's request for risk assessment audit from last year. We really value the work of your office. I will now turn the floor over to you for your presentation, followed by questions from the board.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the board, Chief, and senior leadership team. My office was requested to consider conducting a risk and opportunities assessment of the Ottawa Police Service and develop an independent audit work plan to identify and prioritize opportunities to more effectively and efficiently deliver police services in the City of Ottawa. I want to thank the board and the Chief for this invitation, and I'm very much looking forward to the role my office can play in continuing to enhance transparency and accountability through our work. Today, I will briefly walk you through the risk and opportunities-based planning process that we performed, the audit priorities we are proposing for the next 3 years, as well as the audit horizon. 4 steps were undertaken to arrive at our audit work plan. First, we reviewed key documents, including items such as the strategic plan, annual reports, budget, recent assessments, and the list goes on. We also undertook consultations with members of the board, the senior leadership team, as well as the president of the Ottawa Police Association and the Senior Officers Association, as well as other experts in the field of policing, to obtain input on strategic and organizational objectives, risks, anticipated changes and challenges to the operating environment as well. Furthermore, we obtained an understanding of key roles and responsibilities of the various external oversight bodies that govern or perform reviews of the Ottawa Police Service to mitigate potential overlap with their work. We also met with the internal audit function to discuss past, current, and planned audit coverage to minimize potential duplication of efforts. These steps enabled us to compile and prioritize engagements based on risks and opportunities, considering factors including complexity, financial significance, internal and external changes in the environment, as well as public interest and perception. The audit selection process was based on our assessment of risks, available resources, and the need to be agile in our current environment. The plan is flexible to allow our office to respond to emerging issues, as well as pivot should priorities change. The audits recommended to the board aim to help the service as well as the board mitigate risks, as well as improve accountability, the control environment, as well as efficiency and effectiveness of operations. We are proposing 3 audits as part of our 2024-2027 audit work plan. The first audit would be an audit of staffing. And the preliminary objective for this audit would be to assess human resource recruitment, deployment, and retention processes, and how these impact their ability to meet the service's demands. This audit would be commencing later this year. The second audit we are proposing would be an audit of project management. The preliminary objective of this audit would be to assess the service's project management policies and practices. Strategic projects, both past and present, would be potentially examined as part of this audit. And we have this audit to be slotted later in 2025. The third audit that we were proposing today is an audit of the equity, diversity, and inclusion. The preliminary objective for this audit would be to assess the service's equity, diversity, and inclusion programs, policies, and strategies, comparing them to best practices in the sector, and assessing progress against strategic plan. This audit would be scheduled to commence later in 2026. The preliminary objectives that I've just described would be further refined based on the results of the planning phases for each specific audit. The proposed timelines are also subject to change due to our office's requirement to be nimble and agile as the risk landscape continuously evolves. Next slide, please. We have incorporated flexibility into our audit work plan to ensure our office is able to execute work under its mandate and has the agility to quickly shift priorities. Should time permit, or should priorities within either the service or our office shift, we would leverage audit subjects from this list on the slide as either additional audits or replacement for some of the audits that we just described. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present a proposed work plan, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Natalie. Very much appreciate the presentation and all the pre-work you've done to get to this stage and your office has done. Member Curry.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Natalie. So this is great. I was happy to see this. So when I look at your audit horizon and I see the topics there, and I also, knowing how busy you are with the city and all your audit plan there, I'm wondering if you can, well, first of all, you say if you have time, you might do some of these others, but I'm wondering if you could try to work in some of them into some of the categories you already have. So for example, the audit of staffing, I'm wondering if you couldn't also try to look at special constables in there at the same time. So that's one. The other one I was thinking is cybersecurity. You could potentially look at that at the same time you do project management. Maybe you will disagree. I'm just asking. At the same time, you could, in that audit, maybe look at special constables. But what do you think about that? There's so many things that are interrelated.
Chair, thank you for the question, Member Curry. You are right. So many of them are interrelated. And I think as I spoke with almost all the members of the board, this was a question that came up. And so by default, I do think we are going to peripherally touch upon many of those items, but to really do a deep dive and to be able to provide value add in those particular areas, I do think it would be very difficult to be combining these. Staffing in itself is going to be a very, very large item. It will dive into items, for example, under human resources, including, I think some of these items can have root causes associated with overall staffing and resource availability. But in order to actually combine these, I think would be very difficult. I think our first audit in itself, we're already struggling internally on how to be able to scope that in order to be able to provide timely and relevant information back to the board.
Okay, I hear you. I know how big these things are. So you're not really going to like my next question, which was, how about you combine number 3 and number 1? Because I find it hard to believe you're not going to do some of our EDI strategy, the Drive to report material in your audit of staffing for number 1.
Again, I think we may peripherally touch when you have various requirements within your hiring processes, or even just with regards to general staffing levels that are tied to DE&I. So I think we will, again, touch upon aspects of it, but in order to get a proper coverage of that entire area, or really be able to provide meaningful input, I do believe it would warrant a separate audit on its own.
Okay, I suspected you might say that too. The other thing I will say is that I'm glad you're doing these 3 because I think there's so much going on. I mean, everything is relevant to everything, but there's so much going on and so much we already have for you to work with and look at that I think is all very good. But, as every audit with the city, you look at, there are some great things going on, and then there's always room for improvement. So I think you've picked 3 good categories, and I don't know that you'll have a lot of other time in between and change priorities, but you never know, because all the other categories are great as well, but I would have put special constables up higher. However, that's my 2 cents. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Curry. Vice Chair Carr.
Thanks very much. I personally would have put project management up higher, even though it's pretty high. But no, I mostly just wanted to say how much I appreciate the fact that your office is taking this on. When we look at the fact that close to, is it what, about 10% of the city's budget is spent on policing. It's obviously very important that we have that leadership from the OAG's office in terms of making sure that that adequate processes are in place and that there is audits being done. So I'm a big fan of audit. They can improve performance and how we do things. So I just wanted to say how great it is that you're taking this on. I think this is this the first time that the city's OAG office has been engaged in auditing for the Ottawa Police Services that you know of? Other than the convoy audit.
Chair, I believe this would be the third time. There was another audit done by my predecessor. That being said, this is the first time that we've been asked to undertake a full assessment and come up with a plan. And I'm very thankful for this request. It's something that I've been discussing with the various chairs over the past 3.5 years while I have been in this role. It aligns us with the City of Toronto's Office of the Auditor General, as well as their board, and a practice that they have been applying for many years.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and of course I knew about the convoy audit. I just and appreciated the work you did on that one. But yeah, very much looking forward to seeing the results. And thank you so much for taking this on.
Thank you.
Member Donaldson.
Because I hadn't been part of the original board that invited the Auditor General to look at these reports, I just wanted to let the board know that Natalie was kind enough to reach out to me and bring me up to speed on some of the previous discussions and give me a bit of an overview of what she was planning on doing. So I'd just like to publicly thank her for that, for helping get me up to speed on this whole issue. Thanks, Natalie.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So Natalie, I also would like to thank you for reaching out to board members and to the police service to try and come up with the list. And I am in agreement with the 3 that you have selected and the priorities, the sequence that you've done there. So thank you very much. I will read in for the record that it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve the Office of the Auditor General's 2024-2027 audit work plan for the Ottawa Police Service. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Natalie, for presenting, and thank you to you and your office for being with us today.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to agenda item 7.4, presentation on core strategy and neighborhood operations center. Chief, I will turn this over to you and your staff for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Fakarani, and I'll just ask for our presenters to be let into the meeting. And while, well, I will wait maybe for them. Okay, is everybody in? I just got a smaller screen. I see Anita there. Are we good, Anita? Okay, very good. You know, this core strategy, you know, we've talked about it for a little while at board meetings as well, publicly, and you see some of the response, the delegates, which I was pleased to see. I saw the list of 8 delegates. I didn't know the topics. A lot of it had to deal with what Anita is going to present shortly. And look, we are excited about this in regards to, look, we know there's issues down in the Byron market, in the general, you know, collateral area. And we want to, we know we need to do something, and we know we can't do it alone. But we know we're a piece of that pie that that has to be focused on what we need to focus on, which this program is going to talk about. We also know that we need that partnership in the communities, and I'm really pleased with the number of partners that Acting Sergeant Stam and Anita have been able to get engaged with this program. It will succeed with those partners. It will not succeed if we don't have those partners, but we will do our part in terms of enforcement. We'll do our part in terms of trying to help and put these people, these vulnerable population that really need a positive path. So very happy to have both Paul and Anita here, and I will turn it over. Paul, did you want to say anything before I turn it over to them?
Nope, I'll do enough talking later, so we'll turn it over to the experts for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
We can, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to present on the core community outreach response and engagement strategy. I'm Anita Grace, a data analyst with the OPS. I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Acting Sergeant Paul Stam. Paul and I have been developing this strategy over the past months in collaboration with community partners and stakeholders, both internal and external to the OPS. Merci de cette occasion de vous parler de la stratégie d'approche, d'intervention et de mobilisation communautaire qu'on appelle CORE. Je m'appelle Anita Grace, je suis analyste de données pour l'SPO. Je suis accompagnée ce soir de mon collègue, Sergeant Paul Stam. Paul et moi avons travaillé au fil des derniers mois pour développer cette stratégie en collaboration avec des partenaires de la collectivité et des intervenants du SPO et d'ailleurs. For tonight's presentation, I'm going to start with a quick overview of CORE and why we launched this project. Then I'll briefly describe our data analytic approach with regard to identifying crime concentration in people and places. Next, Paul will walk you through the implementation of CORE initiatives. Pour la présentation de ce soir, je vais débuter par un petit aperçu de la stratégie CORE et de la raison d'être du projet. Puis je vais décrire en bref notre démarche d'analyse de données en ce qui concerne l'identification de la concentration de criminalité par individu et endroit. Ensuite, Paul va vous expliquer la mise en œuvre d'initiatives CORE. The CORE approach is evidence-based, meaning it uses rigorous data analysis and draws upon peer-reviewed research and best practices. Importantly, our evidence is not just police data, but also community input, such as gathered through direct engagement, focus groups, and surveys. Our goals are to build safer communities for everyone and to see crime levels decrease. We also seek to enhance supports for vulnerable community members and to champion community-led solutions that will bring about sustainable change in Ottawa's downtown. La démarche CORE fait appel à une analyse rigoureuse des données et s'appuie sur des pratiques exemplaires. Nos objectifs sont de bâtir des collectivités plus sûres pour tout le monde et d'en arriver à une diminution des taux de criminalité. Nous visons aussi à améliorer le soutien envers les membres vulnérables de la population, ainsi qu'à promouvoir des solutions communautaires qui amèneront un changement durable au centre-ville d'Ottawa. Our plan is to be fully operational this summer and to have preliminary evaluations of outcomes and outputs available to you by the fall. In keeping with an evidence-based approach, over the coming months, we will continue to test, track, and adjust, working closely with internal and external stakeholders to identify what's working and what's not. Dans l'esprit d'une démarche factuelle, nous allons continuer au cours des prochains mois à tester, à suivre et à ajuster, en étroite collaboration avec des intervenants internes et externes, en vue d'établir ce qui fonctionne et ce qui ne fonctionne pas. Nous allons continuer cette présentation en anglais, mais il me fera plaisir de répondre à toutes vos questions en français comme en anglais. As we'll be demonstrating, the CORE approach essentially focuses on three things: people, places, and partnerships. We'll get into more detail on that soon, but I want to look at the reasons why we're doing this work. In broad terms, the problem being addressed through the core strategy is the high volume of crime and social disorder in Ottawa's Byward Market and Rideau Street corridor. Over the past 7 years, the average crime severity in Rideau Vanier ward has been 3.5 times higher than the city average. Surveys show that people living in this ward feel less safe compared to Ottawa residents in general. A recent survey by the Rideau BIA found that the vast majority of businesses in the Byward Market and Rideau corridor report that street issues impact their business operations and that their staff are concerned about safety. We also heard today from delegates talking about their own personal experiences with safety and perceptions of fear and safety in the Byward and Rideau area. In order to understand more what's driving these safety concerns and crime trends, we've dug deep into our data. First of all, looking at places. There's a significant body of research on crime patterns that show that crime trends tend to be heavily concentrated in a small number of areas. Often as little as 5% of an urban area will see concentrations of about 50% of crimes. It is important to note that since this is a pilot project, we've done only our analysis on Sector 24, which is an area within the Central District that includes the Byward Market, Lower Town, and Sandy Hill. Because this is an area that already has high concentrations of crime, we don't expect to see our results perfectly mirror analysis that's been done in urban areas overall. To identify our areas that we're referring to as hotspots, our geospatial analyst first created an overlay of 150-meter hexagons for the whole city. This is so that we have equal-sized geographic areas for comparison. She then used data from our records management system and the crime severity index provided by Statistics Canada to identify areas in Sector 24 that have both high volumes of crime and that have concentrations of the most severe crime, so the crime severity index. The image you see on the right is an overlap of places with both high concentrations of crime counts and with high levels of crime severity. The numbers shown in the hexes, the higher number is the crime severity, the cumulative crime severity. The lower number is the number of crime events for a period of January 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. I see the question from Vice Chair Carr.
I just want to make sure I understand correctly. Just walk me through the example. Like I'm looking at the number at Nelson Street, and that's probably Rideau there. 45,131. That is the. I just want to make
the crime severity index. So Statistics Canada provides a measurement for every crime. Basically, it's based on the sentence that's handed down over the previous 5 years by Canadian courts. So, for example, sentence of first-degree murder receives a score of around 8,000, which represents the number of days that someone would typically, on average, be sentenced. And then something like bike theft has a score of 100 or something like that. So why we use this is it's being used by lots of other police services. It indicates the effect of crime. For example, if in your neighborhood there was 10 homicides, the effect is going to be much different than if it was, 10 bike thefts. So that's where we use both crime severity, but then the other number just shows how many incidents.
Okay, so there's 1,230 incidents, and that could be one person with 10 crimes if they were found with, stolen property, drug possession, assault against, whatever the case may be. It's the number of incidents is not the number of people, correct, on the bottom?
Exactly, it's the number of incidents, and we are using what's called the primary, which means it's the sort of the most severe incident. So as you suggest, there could be in one situation someone might have a few charges, but what we're using is what's called the primary UCR, meaning the most severe or most serious. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? It's hard to see. Sorry, if not, I'll continue.
I don't see any, so please continue.
Thank you, Chair. So a similar process we used for people. In this, which again, we're looking to identify the people who are responsible for the highest volume and severity of crime. Again, research suggests that a small number of people commit the majority of crimes. So starting with the same data set as discussed previously, our crime analyst identified individuals who'd been charged for these criminal events. This resulted in a list of roughly 1,300 people who'd be responsible for about 2,000 crimes. It is important to note, though, that we can have one individual involved. Have more than one individual involved in a single event. Given the complex characteristics of the Byward Market including the concentration of services for people who are unhoused, our data show a more dispersed distribution of crime and severity than might be seen if we were looking at the city overall. In other words, we have a larger proportion of individuals who are committing lower severity crimes. It's about 10% of the charged individuals who are responsible for about 50% of the crime harm and for about 27% of the crime events. Analysis of this 10% demonstrates why we need to work closely with our community partners to bring about effective change in the Byward market. When we looked at that 10%, we could see that half of the individuals had either no fixed address or their address was listed as one of the downtown shelters. Almost half of the high harm individuals were also under the age of 30, 10% were under the age of 10. Almost half of them are racialized. One of the next steps for our data analytics is to identify individuals who are most frequently involved in the police, and that can be in a variety of capacities, whether as the accused, as a suspect, as a witness, and as a victim as well. And we're all looking at beyond just criminal events. We could be looking at mental health calls, provincial instances. So that will be our next step to identify people, and these are identifying particularly vulnerable people. Unless there are any questions about this data part, then I will turn it over to Paul, who will speak to how core initiatives will be implemented.
That's great. Thanks so much, Anita. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Paul Stam. I'm currently an acting sergeant with Ottawa Police. And over the last year, beginning in January 2023, I was assigned as a community police officer in Sector 24, primarily working in Sandy Hill, Lower Town, and the Byward Market. And one of the primary functions of a community officer is to meet daily with residents, with businesses, with all community members to hear about what their experiences are and what the problems are that they're dealing with in their communities. In fact, last year, around this time, I was sitting in a community meeting with that safety committee that was mentioned by one of the delegations in that community housing building. And what I heard over the course of that year is very much echoed by our delegations today, is that people are scared. They don't feel safe. They're tired of living in fear. They feel frustrated. They feel like this public safety crisis has sort of been allowed to overtake their communities, and they feel abandoned by both the city and by the police. They don't know what to do about it. And they want to see more police officers, and they want to feel protected, and they want to feel safe and reassured in their communities. In addition to those community members, I met very frequently daily with street involved and unhoused folks who are most often the victims of these crimes. For example, I had a young man tell me that he sleeps with his shoes as a pillow every night. Otherwise, when he wakes up, they're gone. I had a young woman tell me that she's terrified to use drugs alone because when she passes out, she's often been sexually assaulted. I had an outreach worker friend of mine tell me how a young woman asked his advice for where she should sleep one night outside. And she asked, I want to be in a place that's out of the way, it's not going to bother people, but I also want to be close enough so that people will hear me screaming when I need help. And this is the reality of life for folks living and working in the downtown core right now. Nobody feels safe. The primary things that are driving these issues are the lack of housing and lack of mental health and substance use support and treatment. And those are sort of outside the police scope and mandate, but those things are driving high rates of crime and disorder that are increasingly engaging the police public safety mandate and creating a community safety emergency that's creating greater and greater demands on limited police resources. So when we started developing this core strategy, the primary question was, given this increasing demand and given these problems and our limited resources, how can we be as effective and efficient as possible? And evidence-based policing allows us to do that by taking a very precision approach to resource deployment and investment, using studies that have been well established and supported by research. For example, there's a tendency to sort of condemn an entire community or neighborhood as being problematic. So all of Lower Town or all of Byward is a problem, and that may be the perception, but in reality, when we look at the data, crime is actually highly concentrated in a small number of very acute micro places called hotspots. And hotspots can be a street corner, they can be a specific address or a block. What we did, as Anita said, is we use this hexagonal tessellation to equally distribute places across Sector 24 and then look at where crime was happening. And we found that 1.8% of hexagons contained 40% of all crime events. So almost half of all crime was happening in less than 2% of places. And this is obviously very important for resource deployment because we can use that precision approach to deploy our resources most effectively and efficiently. So for hotspot policing uses data to identify these highly concentrated hotspot areas. Now, once identified, then we can use other evidence-based strategies for police to respond to those hotspot areas. So first and foremost, what we'll be doing is an enhanced police presence. And there's a number of reasons for this. These are not police crackdowns. These are not enforcement sweeps. What this enhanced presence is designed to do is put more officers in the right places at the right times, which is in direct response to community requests and demands. Frequent, highly visible uniformed police response creates a sense of safety. It reassures the public that the police are present and active in their communities. It has a very strong deterrent effect. When people are aware that the police might be coming around the corner at any second, they're very much likely to engage in crime and disorder and those unwanted activities. And there is an enforcement component to it as well, of course. With police more present and active, they will be detecting and observing more of these criminal activities, and they'll be well positioned to respond quickly and effectively to those issues. In practical terms, what this looks like is neighborhood resource teams, community police officers, and frontline officers engaging in these areas, patrolling these areas, and engaging with the community in these areas through foot patrols, through bicycle patrols, and also through vehicle patrols. Secondly, that provides an immediate crime reduction and deterrent and prevention response. But what we also want to do is a more long-term sustained crime prevention. And to do that, we'll be using community-led problem solving. Identifying the hotspots tells us where the crime is, but it doesn't tell us why these areas are hot. So to do that, we need to do a deeper analysis, looking both at our data, but also working with the community to hear their feedback and their input on what they think the problems are and what the solution should be to address those problems. One example of how we'll be doing this is a crime prevention through environmental design blitz, which we're rolling out in the next few weeks. And we'll be working with community partners to look at specific addresses which have been very hard hit by the current situation downtown, provide SEPTED audits using our OPS SEPTED specialists, and then working with a third-party community partner to provide funding to pay for some of the recommendations that they find to enhance safety and security as a result of those SEPTED audits. And we'll be working with our NGO partners, our service providers, and obviously our business association, community association partners, and various city departments. In addition, because what's driving many of these issues is of course social service and public health issues in these hotspot areas, it can't just be limited to a police response. So we're also working very closely with the City of Ottawa community engagement teams to share data in terms of where we're focusing our efforts, and also we'll have an integrated presence with community officers on the ground, integrated with those community engagement teams several times a week in those hotspot areas. And it's not on the slide, but I would also like to mention, oh, my apologies. Here. It's not on the slide, but I would like to mention that we're also partnering with the OC Transpo Special Constable Unit to increase their presence in these areas as well, especially along Rideau Street in those transportation areas, and on the LRT on Rideau Street, which is particularly hard hit area. So can I have the next slide, please, Anita? So when we say that hotspots policing is evidence-based, is it actually effective? It's one of the best studied and most well-supported police strategies that we have. Is overwhelmingly proven to be effective at reducing crime with very little or no negative impact on the community. In addition, research shows that hotspot policing doesn't just push crime around the corner. It doesn't have that displacement effect. That concentrating on these very small number of micro places actually has a diffusion effect, and those crime control benefits are seen across the wider community. Next slide, please. So moving on from places to people, similarly, with places, crime is highly concentrated amongst a small number of highly active offenders. And our data, when we looked at it downtown, shows that 10% of offenders are contributing to about 50% of crime harm or severity, as Anita explained. And so once again, we're taking a precision approach to prevent crime by proactively focusing on folks who are disproportionately responsible for causing it. Within that 10% of offenders, there's a subset of folks who are engaged in high harm, violent, and serious crime. These are high harm offenders. They're repeatedly victimizing the community, and they're especially targeting vulnerable, street-involved folks who are overwhelmingly more likely to be victims of crime. These high harm offenders are carrying weapons, they're engaging in violence and robbery and assaults, and they're actively trafficking in toxic drugs such as fentanyl. So in response, we're going to be taking a very direct law enforcement approach with these offenders, and that's going to be led by the neighborhood resource teams. And that, in practical terms, what that looks like is enforcement through arrests, of course, if people have outstanding reasons for them to be arrested, through executing warrants if there's outstanding warrants to be executed, and also through compliance checks. We know that many frequent offenders have court-imposed conditions, and we want to make sure that they're abiding by those conditions as much as possible. We're also working very closely with the Crown Attorney's Office to make sure that we're doing this in an appropriate and effective way, and to make sure that when some of these files do go to court, that they're given the appropriate attention that they require. From the prevention side, we want to prevent any repeat offending and repeat crime. And so we're working on developing, it's currently still in development, we're developing a partnership with the John Howard Society to help support and fund some of their transitional housing and reintegration programs so that we can catch folks as they're coming out of detention, support them as best as we can, and prevent them from going back into that bad situation and to break that cycle of criminal offending. Next slide, please. So within that 10% that I mentioned is another subset of folks who are not engaged in high harm criminal offending. They're involved in very high amounts of low level, sort of low harm types of crime. And this type of crime is crime that's being driven by much more complex underlying factors such as substance use, mental health issues, or of course, lack of housing. And a perfect example is a prolific shoplifter who might have to commit theft multiple times a day in order to fund their substance use. And I'll give you one example of a young woman who grew up here in Lowertown in downtown Ottawa. And over the course of just a few weeks last spring and summer, she was suspected of stealing about $20,000 worth of merchandise just from the Rideau Center alone. This young woman grew up in a violent, chaotic home surrounded by crime and drugs. She was street involved from the time that she was 12 years old. As with many of these folks, she was a victim long before she was ever an offender. She was a victim of a violent sexual assault at a very young age and lived with the trauma and the mental health issues that came as a result of that for her entire life. She later became addicted to crack cocaine and fentanyl and started engaging in sex trafficking and prolific shoplifting in order to support her drug use. Over the course of her life, she had 326 contacts with the Ottawa Police Service. She had multiple mental health apprehensions. She had 154 criminal charges. Last year alone, she was arrested and detained and released 7 times. And after her last release, she overdosed on fentanyl and unfortunately passed away. Now, this story is absolutely not unique. In fact, it's extremely common. And because it's so common, this can't be chalked up to somebody just falling through the cracks. What this represents is a total systems failure, and which has inappropriately positioned the police and the criminal justice system as the primary solution to dealing with issues that are fundamentally related to health and social conditions and not to crime. And this is just not an effective solution to dealing with these types of crimes. It's not an effective way of dealing with these types of offenders, and it doesn't provide them the support they need. And so in recognition of this problem, many of those of us who are working in the front line, including the police and other outreach workers and an array of other community partners, came together. And OPS has been working with over 30 community partners over the last year to build the Ottawa Downtown Integrated Community Situation Team. It was created to better support at-risk individuals who frequently interact with the criminal justice system. And from the OPS perspective, the goal is to divert as many of these low harm repeat offenders away from the criminal justice system and get them the help and support they need to interrupt that cycle of crime and criminalization. Essentially, it's a round table of community partners that meets bi-weekly to focus our collective resources to support these folks and anyone who one of the table partners has identified as being at acutely elevated risk of harm. And that harm may be elevated due to risk of victimization, from criminalization, from substance use, from mental health issues, or from housing instability, etc. There are 70 situation tables across the province currently. And up until this year, Ottawa was one of only 2 cities that didn't have one. So this was a serious service delivery gap that we identified, and that we worked with over 30 partners to fill that gap. And now we have a extremely successful situation table that we're extremely proud to be part of, to be one partner at that table. We are donating the time of one officer to help coordinate the functions of that table, to help run the meetings and coordinate email and referrals, etc. And that is only until that position can be filled by a community partner once we get the funding. It's extremely important for me to emphasize that this table is not led by the police. It is led by community members. We have 2 co-chairs who represent the Sandy Hill Community Health Center and the Salvation Army. The police are one partner that sit at the table. And the partner agencies who are committed to being at this table are not connected to the other police-focused elements of the core strategy, such as focused enforcement and hotspot policing. The ICST is a tremendous resource that we've helped develop to meet this need, but it is the partners who sit at that table are not necessarily a part of the other elements of the core strategy. So currently we have 31 partners who are fully committed or in the process of committing. We have an additional 14 partners who are prospective, and we hope will join soon. Next slide, please, Anita. So the Neighborhood Operations Center supports the core strategy by enhancing police presence, visibility, and accessibility in the downtown community. But very much like the rest of the core strategy, it is not primarily police focused. It is about community partnerships. It is to facilitate coordination interaction with our frontline partners, and that includes community engagement teams, as I mentioned, our Ottawa paramedic service partners, and our OC Special Constable partners. Additionally, it provides us a physical space for meetings with our business community, our business association partners, community association partners, our outreach teams, our health service partners. It provides a foundational support to the core strategy as a hub, as an operational center to conduct these efforts. It should also be noticed that this is phase 1 of a multi-phase expansion. So currently, while it is primarily the police who will be using the Neighborhood Operations Center in terms of a permanent presence, the vision and the hope is that we can expand this center to have an array of community support services housed there, and with also potential for public access in future phases of development, depending on resources. As far as timeline, the NOC is to be fully operational as of June 3rd. That means it will be operational and we will have a presence there, but the official opening ceremonies, that date is yet to be determined. And as most already know, the location is technically within the Rideau Shopping Center, although it faces directly onto the Rideau Street, just west of William Street, with only a street entrance. Next slide, please. So the previous elements of the core strategy that I've outlined are provide immediate response and effectiveness in terms of deterrence and reducing crime and crime prevention. Also, sort of with the problem-oriented side of things, we have that medium-term sustainable crime prevention and reduction efforts. But the Community Advisory Board is something that we're proposing as a cross-sectoral task force, which can advocate for more long-term changes to address these long-term systemic barriers to community safety that we're encountering. And obvious examples of that are increased need for housing and increased need for substance use and mental health treatment. Primarily acts as a governance body that provides oversight and accountability, and coordination to the overall core strategy. And we see it as being made up of partners who represent all our different partners that are part of the core strategy, and also various community stakeholders, including community associations and business associations. As I said, it functions primarily as a strategic guidance and oversight body, but also we want to use it as a feedback loop to exchange information in both directions, both between receiving information from the public, but also for the police to give information back to our partners and to the public in terms of how the strategy is progressing. And development on this is ongoing, and we're hoping to have a formalized structure with staff appointed to administer and coordinate the community advisory board by the time the core's strategic launch, which is at the end of June. Next slide, please. And as we've said, several times, the core is fundamentally an evidence-based strategy. And in order for us to ensure that we're being effective, we need to have strategic tracking. We need to track what we're doing, and not just in terms of the police work we're doing and implementation and how closely we've adhered to our implementation plan. How many police officers are we putting into those hotspots, or how many referrals are we making to the ICST? We most importantly need to track our outcomes. What is the effect that this strategy is having on crime counts, on the crime severity, and on calls for service to police and to our emergency frontline emergency partners in the downtown core? And I think most importantly, what we really want to track is perceptions of safety, security, and fear. Perceptions become reality for folks, and I think that was mentioned sort of by one of the delegations, saying that despite what the numbers might show, that people just don't feel safe and secure. So we want to make sure that that we're having a positive impact on perceptions of safety, security, and fear. And we also want to monitor and track perceptions of police and how effective, neutral, respectful, and fair we're being in administering this strategy with the community. This is absolutely not an imposition of the police on the community. This is us working hand in hand every step of the way with our community to make sure that we're being as effective as possible. Happy to take any questions now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sergeant Stam, and thank you, Anita, for the presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Member Henschel.
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions right now, just a comment. First of all, very much appreciate the thorough presentation and really appreciate sort of taking this holistic, data-driven approach to dealing not just with the police issues, but the broader issues that drive crime and other aspects of the problems that we see in communities. So from that perspective, I think it's a great job. I'm very happy to see that we're taking this approach that includes the rest of the community and the different partners. I also think it brings us back a little bit to sort of Peelian principles about how you deal with community safety. So kudos to the team, and really looking forward to seeing the results from this as it moves forward.
Thank you. Member Curry.
I really just want to say thank you very much. I mean, we've been just waiting desperately to hear this presentation. I'm hoping you have a lot of people watching this. If not, I definitely have already sent a message to the Canada North staff saying we're going to take this section of this meeting and put it in our newsletter just for people to watch this one section. One thing we hear in Canada over and over and over again is that, especially from seniors, will say that they just aren't going downtown anymore. Like they've just decided they're not going downtown. They can't do it anymore. They're so scared. And that's a terrible, terrible thing. So I really want to give people some hope that, that we are doing, I think, as much as we can right now to make sure that it is safe for everyone. Your presentation was such a good mix of understanding how unfair it is for the people who are struggling with mental health and addictions to not have the right services. And then also for the business owners and people who want to live downtown and enjoy it and are also scared. So I really, really appreciate this, and just keep on going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Curry. Member Donaldson.
I think it's just so completely appropriate that we've had this presentation after hearing what the individuals in their presentations were earlier today. It dovetails nicely, and they certainly underscored some of the fear and concerns they've got And here we've got a potential solution to sort of address those. I'd also like to thank you for your understanding of the issues that homeless individuals deal with and how they're so vulnerable in the community. That's appreciated. Last week, the Ottawa Board of Trade released a Living Capital Downtown Ottawa action agenda, which is something they've been working on for over a year. And one of the pillars in that action agenda is safety and security. And so just if you haven't had an opportunity to see that document, it dovetails really nicely with the core strategy, just as a suggestion.
Thank you, Member Donaldson. Do the presenters want to comment? Oh, I see Chief Stubbs also has his hand up.
I just wanted to just wrap up. I know we're running just a bit late perhaps, but I think you can see maybe why the initial my initial comments, I was excited about this presentation. And I really want to thank both Acting Sergeant Stam and Anita for the hard work that they've done to put this together. I mean, it was about a year ago, I remember meeting with Paul about this topic in the boardroom and sort of outlining kind of our thoughts on where we need to go, because it was obvious that there were some issues, and he's taken it, run with it, and has done an incredible job. And then after bringing on the brains of Anita, who's a data wizard, and really advancing this as well, this is a 1-2 punch that I'm so pleased are running this, along with another couple key team members as well. And I think you said it, Member Curry, and even Member Donaldson as well. This balance that we have of really needing to show that empathy and help people, but also hold some people accountable that are really creating a lot of victims down in the downtown core. They're violent, they're drug dealers. That's our lane. We need to deal with that, and we will have that lane covered. But we need the community as well too. So this is going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be sustained work. This is not go hard for 2 weeks and relax. This is it's something that we really have to dedicate resources to, and we're prepared to do that. But Paul and Anita have got us off on paper to a great start. Great job with the table that they've put together in our enforcement strategy. So I just want to say thank you to them.
Thank you, Chief. I would also echo the comments. A great presentation. Particularly appreciated the data analytics that play to the operations. I think that's very key, and the stats that you showed, where it's that very few who are creating the most number of issues and hours that are being spent, and how do we tackle that? So very much appreciated that presentation, and so thank you for that. No further questions. We'll read in the recommendation that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this presentation for information. Is the presentation received?
Received.
Received.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Sergeant Stam. Our next agenda item is 7.10, that was held. This was, I asked it to be held, and I wanted to provide the chief just with an opportunity to comment on it. Before I do that, I will say, I want to thank the chief, and I want to thank the service for undertaking the operational review. As you'll recall, when these incidents occurred, there was a lot of outcry on what was happening, and people wanted answers. And the underlying rationale for conducting the operational review is really to build trust with the community, to be open and to be transparent, to say we're learning lessons. And so from the chief to undertake the operational review, to bring it out into the board and discuss it and agree to the recommendations. I want to thank you for that. I think the board thanks you for that. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity, if you wanted to say anything further about this incident. It was an incident that involved sort of reactions from the community, and just to give you an opportunity to comment on the report you received and the agreement to implement all the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair Fakarani. Yeah, I will say a few things in regards to this incident and the subsequent review. So you'll recall on February 17th and 18th weekend, it was a busy one for our team, multiple events and demonstrations. And our team overall did a commendable job of managing most of the events. But as you mentioned, we drew some criticism for the handling of some fireworks that were set off during the Saturday evening when most of our team had been demobilized. So due to this, I asked for a full review of the entire weekend to ensure we understood the varying responses for all the events. The independent review of our operational planning in response to the demonstration revealed that a robust security planning framework based on established best practices was in place. So that's a positive thing. However, the review also highlighted areas for improvement. And we know that the response to the firework events that occurred on Queen Street after the formal demonstrations concluded, that was not what the downtown residents expected from us. So as such, and as you mentioned, the gaps that identified in the review have prompted us to accept all of the recommendations that were proposed in the report. I won't publicly discuss in detail all of the recommendations, as there are some operational and internal sensitivities to a few of them. However, some of them, or some of the recommendations include refining our situational assessments and decision-making processes, ensuring that more accurate and timely responses in the future. We want to formalize the roles of the police liaison team that are presently unfunded. We will review our demobilization approach to demonstrations to ensure that adequate resources remain available and responsive to any post-protest event that may occur. We will ensure handovers and briefings are conducted by the protest incident commander directly with the patrol incident commander to give full situational awareness. The review found that there was a lack of or poor communication from the on-the-ground supervisor to the duty inspector. This resulted in a response that did not meet our expectations. Further, the misunderstanding of what occurred that evening continued in the days that followed, which resulted in the command team and myself not fully understanding the sequence of events. These issues are being addressed internally to ensure that clarity is achieved and proper communication occurs in the future. Overall, with the adoption of these recommendations, we will bolster our existing policies and standard operating procedures, making us better equipped to handle unexpected challenges related to demonstrations and major events. And since this incident, dozens of demonstrations have occurred. All have been managed effectively that reflect our commitment to learning and evolving from past experiences. Just this past weekend, our team successfully managed a 2-day race weekend in the pro-Palestinian demonstration. I see this review as a positive exercise. It shows that we are committed to continuous improvement and accountability, which is essential for maintaining public trust during these large-scale events. As well, we remain dedicated to evolving and enhancing our practices, ensuring the safety and security of our community. Lastly, I do want to acknowledge the high level of pressure that our incident commanders and the team on the street that actively manage these protests that actively manage these protests day in and day out. They are dynamic, and they all have their own set of nuanced circumstances that require varying decisions and/or strategies that need to be considered. The expectations of protesters, the community, the media, the police board, and the executive command here at the OPS all have to be considered by our team that does that hard work. It's not easy, and I want to thank them for this very difficult work that is such a big part of our jobs in 2024. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions following the Chief's overview? Seeing none, we'll read the recommendation into the record. It is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive the review of operations February 16, 18, 2024 for information. Is the item received?
Received.
Thank you. Our next item is 712, performance report first quarter 2024. I believe this was Member Hurley.
Thanks. I just have a couple of questions. The the section on page 122 of our agenda, or page 3 of the report, talks about the Android devices that had the issue where the automatic call to 911. And I just wondered, that can't have been obviously just our 911 system having that challenge. And did the phone makers or wherever, it says in the report that this problem was fixed. Did anyone ever file any kind of lawsuit against any of the phone companies?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, and I'll just pause to see if anyone on my team does. Yeah.
Yeah. You just think about the cost of that, eh? Like, what the report's saying is that it's a reduction now, since it's been fixed, to 42%, like, of calls. Like, that is and false 911 calls. Like, the cost of that is actually unbelievable. And we're just one city. So I just wondered what the follow-up was, or if they, made any statement of culpability or responsibility for that and the costs. But anyway, something to think about. The other thing I was going to ask is, there was an incident in Canada a few weeks ago where the multiple calls to 911 were not descriptive enough. In the report, it says that the 911, the person at 911 answers and asks a bunch of questions about what's going on. And the investigation afterwards, where police did not arrive for more than an hour, was because the information given to 911 was not indicating that there was a problem, and when there was a problem. So I guess what I was wanting to say is that what I understand has happened since is that our community police officer was excellent. He went over right away, went through all the 911 call tape, figured out what had happened, went to speak to the people who work at this organization. And now this organization has been listed as a priority just unto itself. It is a place where there are a lot of children. So I was just wondering about that. Like, how does that come about, that a place will then get a designation from now on? If a call comes in, police will go automatically.
Right. Well, and I might go to Deputy Ferguson there. I have a few things I might say on that, but I'll give you the first chance there, Trish, and maybe I'll wrap something up. We'll see. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief, and thanks for the question. We have the capability of putting what we call a premise history on a location. So, there are some places where if they have high needs, or if they are, engaging with people who can be particularly volatile or dangerous, that, we have that. So when a call comes in from that address, our call takers, that pops up on the screen. And so if they're not able to generate much in the way of information, our officers in the area know that that is somewhere where they will be going to on a priority in the absence of that information until they're able to get there and validate what's been going on. So we do have that capability.
Chief, did you have any further comment?
Yeah, no, I think, we have that ability. She nailed it. Yeah, we have the ability to add or delete, it could be a politician's residence. It could be a bar that has a lot of issues that we always have to attend to. It could be pretty much anything if we think there's a need there, just to up the response time.
Okay, and my other last question on that specific incident is that then is it possible for a location to have that designation taken away if after a certain amount of time there is no history? I would just say that because I found this to be quite a unique concept where, for us getting this report, so the performance would be listed as very poor, over an hour for the response. But then, we look back and say, oh, this is why this happened. Then we have the designation that it is, it's going to be a response right away when it may not be necessary. This may have just been a one-time thing. So it just, I guess it sort of pointed out to me that there are unique circumstances, but then it does affect the data that we get as to why, these types of calls take place. So anyways, I will always look at these priority 1 calls and 2 and the data we get, because I think that there's lots more we can do for the responses at priority 2, 3, 4, 5. But thanks for those answers.
I agree with that too. I see Trish's.
Yeah, I will just say that, yes, they are assessed on a fairly regular basis, whether they remain on that, the premise history is still applicable or not. Sometimes, you know, I know when we've had schools where there's been a student who's been particularly, where we have, you know, a student who's a runner or something where, you know, we know that, and they're close to a busy intersection. And so when they call, you know, there's a need for them. They've done everything they can, and this child is, and I'm just thinking of this from a, you know, when I was a school resource officer at the top of my head. So, but once that child has, you know, maybe moved on to another school, we do, those things are removed. They don't stay forever. And sometimes they're associated to a particular person. Sometimes it's to an address. Sometimes it's to a situation. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, I'll read in the recommendation. It is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive performance report first quarter 2024 for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to the workforce management report 7.14. And I believe it is Member Henschel.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just had one very small question or observation. It was on the third page on table 2, the attrition. And I know it's a small sample size, but from January to March of this year, I'm just looking at the sworn female resignations and all the civilian females. I know that on the sworn side, that, I don't know, maybe that makes up between 20 and 25% of the police service. So it just on a small sample size seems a little bit high compared to the male one, but I'm not sure that's a trend or not. And then on the civilian female side, it's fairly significant, the resignation. So I'm just wondering if on the longer trend, or if we have any concerns around that there's some trend or impact, or that we're having resignations from women, both in the sworn and the civilian side, that is out of the norm, and any cause for concern.
Deputy Bell, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Member Henschel. We monitor that really closely. Those aren't numbers that are concerning to us, and they're actually within the forecast that we had. But that's why we break it down in that manner, so that we can keep track of it. But at this point, isn't concerning or alarming to us.
Okay, great. Thanks. That was my only question. Just wanted to check on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Henschel. Any other questions or comments? Okay, it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive the Workforce Management Report first quarter 2024 for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Right, thank you. The next one is letters of commendation 7.17. Letters of commendation May 2024. And Chief, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Burnett, over to you.
Thank you. I will struggle with these because all of these commendations that come in are so good. So really picking out a few that are outstanding has its challenges, but I've identified 3 that I want to share with you, and I hope you'll see the impact of these. So this one is dated April 29th from a member of the public, and it involves Constable S. Hickey. The letter reads, Dear Chief Stubbs, on April 9th, I attempted suicide by cutting my wrist and driving my car into the Ottawa River at Crown Point. After I had been in the water for some time, Constable Sean Hickey arrived on scene, called an ambulance, waded out into the cold and deep water, extracted me from the car, and got me to shore. I was suffering from severe blood loss and hypothermia, and the paramedics lost my pulse a couple of times on the way to the hospital. Without Constable Hickey's prompt and courageous actions, I would not have survived this episode. I did survive, will make a complete recovery, and I'm completely grateful to have been rescued. I want to formally commend Constable Hickey for his actions in saving my life. I thought I'd start with that one. The second one is involving Constable Tang and Constable Abidalal. I'm writing to express my thanks for and appreciation of the quality of work done by several Ottawa emergency responders the evening of Monday, March 25th, 2024, when I called 911 at around 8:30 p.m. following finding my husband immobile and not breathing in bed. The team arrived a few minutes after my panicky telephone call and did all they possibly could. Unfortunately, my husband had suffered a cardiac arrest and could not be resuscitated. He was 83 years of age. I have addressed this letter to you because I do not know to whom in particular it should be sent. The two Ottawa police officers who arrived kept me and the other family members present, calm, and informed in extremely upsetting circumstances. All of them are to be warmly commended for the polite, kind, thoughtful, pleasant, calm, and sensitive manner we were treated and spoken to at various stages of the emergency responders' efforts. The follow-up procedures, once my husband had been declared deceased, was explained in calm, clear, and concise manner. In addition, I would like to express my thanks to Nick of the Victim Service Unit for his kind, thoughtful phone call the following day. And then the last one I'd like to read. Dear Chief Stubbs, I want to tell you how much I appreciated the professional, courteous, and caring manner in which a number of your officers helped me when a family member was going through a mental crisis between November 2022 and April 2023. Similarly, when I called 911 on the occasion of my brother-in-law's unexpected death, the officers showed compassion and patience. I can't speak highly enough of the manner in which your officers conducted themselves, including members of your elder abuse unit who met with me and one of my daughters. I know that we expect a great deal of our police officers and are often quick to criticize when we feel they do not meet our expectations. But in my experience, I couldn't have asked for anything more. I'm sorry to say that I did not keep track of all the officers' names who came to my house during that difficult time. And there are the three that I picked. There are probably a lot more in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further to add, Chief Stubbs?
No, that's it's been a long meeting. I'll leave it at that, but it's a great way to.
Okay, so it is recommended that the Ottawa Police Service Board receive the letters of commendation May 2024 for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Thank you. Any other business? We're at item 9 now of our agenda. Do board members have any other business? I'd just like to raise one, not an issue, but actually a congratulations to our member from the board, to member Sutcliffe, who ran the marathon in support of Ottawa Victim Services, and in particular to the father of the Barhaven homicide victims, Danushka Wickramasinghe, and he ran the marathon in support of that. And I think that we should recognize those efforts and congratulate him for doing that, and the efforts and the contributions that people are making to support Danushka Wickramasinghe. So this will conclude our public meeting. Our next meeting will be held on June 24th. Can I please have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.